Hi, this is Simon Obstall and welcome to another tutorial for Apple Motion. And this is part 2 of a tutorial in which we're looking at creating this steampunk door scene. So the first thing I'd like to do is to bring in my door panel. So come to our assets and select door panel, import that. Now I did a little video that showed how I built this up, and basically it's just grabbing a load of elements and compositing them and then trying to color correct them and matte them so they look like they're part of one thing. But I'm not actually going to show you that here because it's a very time-consuming process. What I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to bring in a color solid behind everything so we can see it against blue, just so we can get a better idea of what's what. Okay, so I'm going to select that door panel. Because it's quite large, it's reduced its scale. So I'm going to set that scale to 50, just so it's the right size for this project. And I've renamed that group Left Door. And now I'm going to make a clone of that, and we're going to call it Right Door. So now I want to link the X position of the right door to the X position of the left door. There's the groups in question. So on the right door group, add parameter behavior link, and I'm going to link it to left door like so. And we're going to set the scale to -1 because we obviously want them to move in opposite directions. And then I'm going to come back to left door and I'm going to set that X value to -285. And then what we need to do is come to this clone layer and we need to flop it. So let's rotate it through 180 on Y. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that door panel and I'm going to come to Stylize, Extrude. We'll have an angle of 0 and a distance of 30. And what that's just done is it's kind of given us an inner extrude on the edges of the door where they meet. Now I think I'm just going to set up the basic animation of the door because that's going to drive some of the other things that we're going to be doing. So I'm going to come to 9 seconds on the timeline. So again, with my left door group selected, I'm going to keyframe that X position. And then I'm going to come forward to 21 seconds on the timeline, and I'm going to set that X position to -645. So the doors open up like so. Now I want a little bit of a judder at the beginning and a little bit of a judder at the end. So to do that, I'm going to open up this X value in the keyframe editor. So this is a little bit tricky, but it's well worth it. I'm going to draw around that first keyframe there and right click and ease out. Then I'm going to come to 10 seconds on the timeline and set a keyframe. I'm going to come to 9:08 and I'm going to set another keyframe. And I'm just going to set that to be -290. And now you'll see we get that little sort of hesitation as the doors open. So then I'm going to come to the end here and I actually come to 22 seconds on the timeline. And we're going to do the same sort of thing. I'm going to hit a keyframe there. And what we want to do is come back to 21:08, so 8 frames after it's hit, set a keyframe, and then we just want to nudge it back. So let's go for -635. And that should just give us a nice little slam at the end there as it's sort of hitting the end stops. So a little bit tricky that, but I think it's worth it. It just makes it a lot more realistic looking. So we have that nice little judder at the front there. And as we get to the end, it bounces as it hits the end stops. Now, I'd just like to add a little detail to this door just before the opening. I want to have the effect of the door being unlocked. So I'm going to import a new element called capstan. And it looks like that because we've got a clone of that group. You can see it twice. So let's take it, and we just need to bring it down. I just want to position it here over the top of this existing element here, like that. So then I'm going to come to 8 seconds on the timeline, and I'm going to keyframe its Z rotation. I'm going to set that to -10, and then I'm going to come forwards to 9 seconds, and I'm going to set that to 25. And it just gives us this little unlocking effect like that as the doors begin to open. So next, let's take a look at the mechanism that's going to drive the door opening. And to do that, we're going to import the element called gear hanger assembly. And again, it's mirrored because I've got it in the wrong, I've got it in the group there. I'm going to bring it out into a new group here. So if we solo that, it looks like this. And I'm going to just center it up so you can see. Actually, what this started life as is, I think, a hanger for a bicycle, and I built up this sort of complicated chain of it with some rivets, but I won't waste your time showing how to do that. It's fairly simple construction. Okay, so let's unsolo that. So first of all, I'm going to come over and set up its anchor point, because this is going to be important. I want to set the anchor point here in this eye. So to do that, I'm going to have a X value of 700 and a Y value of 45. Then what I want to do is I want to link it to this master left-hand door. I just want to link its X position. So add parameter behavior link, and then we will select the, left-hand door. What did I say? Probably right-hand door. Left and right, I always get mixed up. So left-hand door is the master. I'm going to link that. So now it's going to move like that with the door. And I want to set this X offset value to -200. So I'm just going to put it behind the doors so we can see it a little bit better what I mean. So it's going to be sitting behind this door. And at the moment, it's just going to move like that with the door. But we also want it to rotate. So we'll set that up in just one moment. I just want to move its Y position right before we start. So I want to have -360 on Y. And then we're going to, as I say, we're going to link its rotation to this left-hand master door so that the rotation of this assembly will match the door movement with those little judders and all the rest of it. So we're going to link the Z rotation, add parameter behavior link, to the left-hand door properties transform position X. And we need to adjust the X offset. So I'm going to set that to 200. And now what happens is that as the door starts to move, that rotation starts to happen as well. You see it had that little kink in it, exactly as per the X rotation, X movement rather, and then it stops there. Again, we've got that nice bounce on it. So that's basically that, and we just need to duplicate this. So what I'm going to do is right-click, duplicate, and obviously we need to mirror this for the top. So we'll come over and set its Y position to 360. And to get it to go the opposite way, we just need to flip it on X. So 180 on X will give us that. Now we've got a nice mirror, and those two both now work in sync with each other, dragging the door away. So I've renamed that group left hangers, and then we're going to mirror it on the other side. So to do that, we're going to make a clone of that group. I've called that group right hangers. And to get it to mirror, we're going to flop that through 180 on Y. So 180 rotation on Y. And now we've got a perfect mirror of that. They're both in sync. They're both being driven by the door animation. So what I want to do is make another new group above this, just to put them in, just to tidy them up. And I've called that new group hangers, and we can put both of these inside it, like so. And then I want to move this back 100 pixels on Z, so it's sitting behind. What I also want to do, and I've omitted to do, is I think these are a little bit too big. So I need to come into both of these original layers there. And I'm just going to reduce their scale down to 75%. We'll get a better chance of actually seeing them if we do that. So that now looks like that. And one other thing I'd like to do, so it looks like these are sitting behind the door, is to add a drop shadow to the door so that they've got a little bit of shadow on them here. So I'm going to come to the left door and select the door panel and turn on the drop shadow. And let's turn the opacity way up. And let's have an angle of 180, and then we can move it out like so. Probably, actually, let's go all the way. Let's go to 100 and then blur it out like so to about 50. And that probably looks too much here, but I think once we've got the rest of the scene in and we're not looking against blue, I think that'll work much better. Could just knock that opacity back just a little. So let's go for 97. It's just a little bit more see-through. That's probably going to be good. So next I'd like to add in our background. And this is another element that's made for you. Background new. Bring that in. I'm bringing it into this group with the color solid in it. And let's set its scale to 100%. Let's move it back 600 pixels on Z. Now, what I also want to do is I want to add a little bit of an extrusion to it. So we've got a little bit more sort of depth on this once the door is opened. So I'm going to come to Filters, Stylize, Extrude. Let's have an angle of 270 and a distance of 20. And I think I might just reduce the front brightness a bit like so. You see that just gives a little bit more 3D quality to it. So at this point, we can bring back in our cogs. And I just want to come back to that cogs master project that we made in the previous tutorial. It looks like this. And before we bring it into the new project, we need to put everything into a single group. So close it all down. Let's make a new group. And I've called that new group Cogs Master. Select everything else and drop it into there, and we can close it down. Now, all we need to do is we need to save that, obviously. So then we can copy it, right-click, copy, and come over to our other project, our main build, and we can paste it in there at the top. So I'm just going to move it down below the hangers like that and above our background. Now, I'm not actually going to use this Cogs Master itself. I'm going to use a clone of it. So I'm going to right-click, make clone layer, and I'm going to turn off the original. And now we've got a clone of that in a new group. I'm going to move this -1000 on X so we can see it, and I'm going to move it back -500 on Z. And I'll move it up 360 on Y. Now it's a little bit big, so I think I'm going to reduce that size down to 75%. Now we can just build up the rest of the four cogs that we're going to be, four master cogs that we're going to be using just by duplicating this clone. So right-click, duplicate. This one we're going to move to +1000 on X, so it sits over on the right there. Then let's duplicate that. And this one we need to move downwards, and I think we need to go for, if I remember rightly, it's -450. And then we just need to offset its rotation like that, about 8 degrees, looks like it's about right. And we also need to flop it, so 180 on Y. And you see now it moves in mesh with the upper cog like that. And then I can duplicate that one more time, and we can set this to -1000 on X, and we've got that on the other side. All of our cogs working rather nicely. So a few more things we need to do before we finish this part, one of which is to have a look at the animation of those cogs. At the moment, they're just kind of rotating smoothly the whole way through, and I want something a little bit more interesting. So as the process starts, I want them to speed up as the door is opening and then slow back down again. So there's a relatively easy way of doing that. And to do that, we need to dive back down again into our cogs. Now, you remember there's a group called extrude there, and then there's the big cog, and it had that rate on it, if you remember. What we're going to do is we're going to add on top of that an extra parameter behavior. So let's come to the rotation and add parameter behavior ramp. So you can actually add one on top of another like that. So they're both applying to the Z rotation. Now, we want to set up these start and end offsets because obviously we want this to start at around 9 seconds and end at around 21 seconds. And because our project is 30 seconds long and it's 24 frames a second, that means we'll have a start and end offset of 216. So 9 seconds in from the start and 9 seconds back from the end. And then what I can do is I can enter an end value of negative 180, and let's increase the curvature all the way up to 100. So that'll just ease both ends of it. And I hope you can see that as we come up to 9 seconds, it starts to speed up quite a lot. If we want it to be even faster, we could increase that number, so negative 270 or something. And let's just see how that goes. You can see how that's moving a lot quicker now. Depends on how heavy you want those cogs to be. And you see how nicely that smooths us into the end there. You can only just about see them, but that was a really nice slowdown. Now, just for tidiness, we've got this group with the cog clones in it. So let's call them cog clones. Just a couple of extra things that I'd like to do before we finish this second part, and that's just to add a couple of extra drop shadows. So I think it would help if the hangers cast a shadow onto the cogs. So we can select that hangers group, turn on the drop shadow, and then we can set the angle to 270, and again opacity all the way up. Let's just play with the distance, something like that, and increase the blur. And I think you can see that now just sort of helps them to sit away from the cogs, a little bit of differentiation there. And the other thing is, do you remember these little capstans? I think that could well do with a drop shadow as well. So I'm just going to zoom in on that so we can see the effect of this. All these little things just add a little bit of extra realism. So turn on the drop shadow for that capstan layer. Again, 270 for the angle. The reason I'm doing 270 is because it gives us a downward light. It's, essentially the scene feels like it's being lit from above. It just makes it easier. Everything's in the same orientation. So again, I'm just going to turn up the opacity all the way up and just play with the distance. I think probably something like that. We've got sort of 13, 14, 15 even maybe. And if we turn that on and off, just looks more convincing, especially when it's animated like that. So that's it for part 2. In the third and final part, what we're going to be doing is looking at the text, and we'll also be adding some lighting and a few extra elements that'll finish the scene off. So I hope you can join me for that one. Thanks very much indeed for watching.